Alright guys, so this is Jason, Prime Time Aquatics himself. We're here in his fish room, and this place is my life goal. I need a basement just so I can have a fish room like this. It is absolutely ridiculous. But Jason, you've got a ton of fish that I've never seen in person before. Part of that is because I've never done a whole lot with like African cichlids. Okay. And even like South American cichlids, I've read more than I've kept. So you want to just take me around and show me what you've got? And
sure.
Yeah.
You want to start?
Cool.
We can start over here with my. We'll start bad and we'll get better, at least in terms of the way the tanks look. This is a 125-gallon Lake Tanganyika tank. It's got some gold ocellatus, some shell dwellers, some Meleagris shell dwellers, inkfin calvus, Cyprichromis leptosoma. There's some super red bristlenose in here as well. A lot of cool fish. The tank right now, it's a little overrun with the algae because there are a couple of flu ball 3.0s in there. So we're dialing in the light. We're dialing it all in. Down below is another 125. This was originally set up for Geophagus, but we had some bacterial issues. So now we've got some Apistogramma cockatoides double reds. One of my favorite tetras, which is the black phantom tetra. We've got a decent number of those, some white skirts, and there's actually some orange laser cory cats in here as well. We're gonna do a lot more planting with this tank. I think it's gonna be cool. It's still in its transitional phases, kind of working out the light and the algae and the plants and everything. Over here, we've got the 150. A lot of different fish here, a lot of fish that I probably wouldn't recommend keeping together. Usually, you can see it's kind of working here. We got some tinfoil barbs that need to be moved to a larger tank, no doubt. Perhaps my favorite fish in the fish room is this Geophagus. It was sold to me as Cernamensis. It's actually most likely an Altifrance, at least a lot of my viewers say it is.
Yeah, he's gorgeous.
Yeah, I really love him.
He is absolutely gorgeous.
And he gets in the right light, and he just sparkles. There's a Frontosa in here, some Severum. So there's a lot of fish from a lot of different areas of the world. Not something I would necessarily recommend, but it works. Nobody's fin nipping, nobody's hiding in a corner all afraid. It's kind of a community overgrowth sort of tank.
And hey, if it's working.
It's working right now. This is a tank that Johanna just set up. It's a Gymnogeophagus balzani. That's the little guys. They're going to grow a lot larger. Some cool gobies, Rhinogobius henchuensis. They're a little bit on the older side. A couple bristlenose plecos in here. It's a cool tank. I think it's going to be pretty awesome when those fish get a little larger. They're probably going to transition to a tank that's going to have some sand instead of gravel, just because it's Gymnogeophagus.
She crushed it on the scape. It looks awesome.
I like it. I really do. I'm excited for when the algae goes away a little bit. I think that's going to be nice. Down here is a community tank. There's a lot of weird fish in here. I think the Redtail shark, it's his tank. He runs it. He's a big guy, he's older, but you can see him right now. He's giving the Geophagus steindactymi a hard time. Usually he leaves him alone a little bit more, but he just wants him in his proper spot on that half of the tank. Then he usually just goes away. These other fish here are Thrychtes maculopennis. They're kind of like a firemouth. Kind of cool fish. Again, they're on the older side. That's why they're in this kind of community sort of tank where we don't breed them anymore.
And they're one that I've never seen before.
Yeah, they're really fun. They're like a firemouth, but they're not nearly as aggressive. So
I'd say they look a little cooler than a firemouth.
Yeah, it just depends on your personal preference. There is what else is in here? Oh, there's a leaf tenopoma under the wood over there. It's probably time for him to go night-night, so he's looking for a place to kind of hang out, chill out. So it's kind of cool. Over here, these are 55-gallon tanks. This is an Mbuna cichlid. I really like this one. This is an Msobo. And what's cool about them is the males and females are different colors. So the males, they have that blue color, and the females are the yellow. And I'm doing something in this tank that, again, I don't necessarily recommend, especially for beginners. And I've got a couple peacocks in here, a Eurekan red, that actually, I didn't realize it was in here when I put the Mbunas in there. It was fry left over. And then we've got a female sulfur head, but those will come out pretty soon. I just want the Msobo in there kind of on their own. This tank on the bottom, another 55. This is Geophagus topahos, redhead topahos. I like these fish a lot. They've bred a lot for us.
I do too.
And we've got a random peacock, and the peacock I like. It's actually a hybrid. It's a combination of a red empress and a dragon blood. And I saved him because the colors were absolutely amazing. So I wanted to kind of keep him aside. I figured he probably would leave these guys alone, and they do. They leave each other alone for the most part. So I think he's going to be cool. We'll have to wait and see when he gets a little bit older. He's still young.
I've got a 75 I plan on getting some Tapajos for.
Yep. Over here, this is a mostly red cherry shrimp tank. We've got some Plecos in here. Combination works pretty well for us. You know, these are the boys' shrimp. They kind of had a breeding project, so that's their thing. They grow them up, they take care of them, and yeah, it's pretty cool. This 20 long, these are Apistogramma cockatoides double reds. Now there's stuff going on here that you would never really think would work, and that is we got a lot of males in this tank right now. They're still on the younger side, and they're not picking on each other yet. I suspect we'll have to move them. There's a couple females and probably like 5 males at least. And when we eventually, when they start really pairing up and having babies, we'll move some of these males out so we don't have any issues. But they actually, even at that size, they've started having babies, or not, or at least having eggs. So that's kind of cool. This is another one of these. It's just a grow out tank, a community tank with some old fish. We've got some Apistogramma mendezi that were really pretty when they were young, but they're getting close to the end of their lifespan. So they're kind of in here chilling out with some rasboras and some an angelfish. This is a tank where we really use it to stock up our jungle valves. So sometimes we've got tanks that are just working tanks, and that's kind of what that's for. So it's kind of cool. One of my favorite fish in our fish room are these Apistogramma panduros. They're cool because the males get the blue, and then if you see the females, they've got the yellow with the black. So I really like them. They're not going to breed well in our water unless I lower the pH and I lower the water hardness. But I love looking at them. I think they're awesome.
I love a panduro.
Yeah, really cool. One of my favorite Apistos. These are Neolamprologus ocellatus, gold ocellatus. So that's a big, lazy male. We get a lot of fry.
He's a hoss.
Yeah, we get a lot of fry from this. In fact, a lot of these fish are their offspring, and we pull them and we put them in other tanks as well. So it's kind of cool. Over here, these are one of my favorite somewhat nano cichlids. This is Cryptoheros nanoluteus. They stay about this size. I really love their colors. They pop. They got the really pretty blue eyes. They're not super aggressive. I would say certainly one of these in a 20 long or a 29 would be a really nice centerpiece fish. You get a pair, you'll definitely have some fish protecting fry, some aggression. Yeah. But I like them. They're just pretty, mostly gentle sort of.
Yeah. I think these made it into one of your top 5 videos, and really got me interested in them. Now that I've seen them in person, I'm even more interested.
Yeah. There's eggs back there sometimes, but they don't usually have babies. This is just a 10-gallon rack, mostly for grow out. And we've got some, sometimes some quarantine, so Johanna just got a betta. And we don't want to just put that in a larger tank and have that contaminate other fish. So bettas, for the most part, are relatively safe, but still, we quarantine all our fish for at least 4 weeks. These are all grow outs, fry red devils, star sapphire, cichlids, just kind of growing out. We've got some urethra reds growing out in that middle 10. We've got some fish in quarantine, the Tritocephalus, which are really cool. They will eventually wind up in the 75-gallon Mbuna tank. Even though they're Tanganyika, they can be a little bit aggressive, so that's where they're going to wind up going. Down here, this is all grow out. Those are the sulfurhead cichlids. The middle 10, those are really tiny little Pseudotropheus solosi Mbuna that the mother just spit out about a week ago, maybe a few days ago. And then we've got some bigger ones right next to them. Those are a few months old. Those are going to have to move. We've got to get them out of the 10-gallon. They're getting too big. We've got a swap coming up, so most of them are probably going to get sold in the next couple of months anyway, but those will be really pretty. I'll show you the adults on the other side. Over here is one of my favorite Mbunas. This is a rusty cichlid. Pretty cool. They're for an Mbuna, they're relatively chilled out. They're not super aggressive. In fact, I had some of the larger ones in my Mbuna tank, and they were getting beat up a little bit, so they got their own tank in here. It's one of the advantages. You try things, but always have a backup plan. That's what I tell people, is if you're going to try aggressive fish, make sure you have a backup plan just in case things don't work out. This is a 33-gallon long, so it's the same dimensions as a 55. This is a Lake Tanganyika setup. We got a number of fish in here. The Calypterus, Neolamprologus calypterus, those are the ones with the blue lips. What's interesting about them is the males are much larger than the females, and in fact, it's one of the greatest differences in terms of sexual dimorphism on the animal planet. So, in the animal kingdom. The other ones, we got the orange fish. Those are Neolampologus lelupi. They have a lot of babies in this fish tank, and so you'll see some that look a little pale, the smaller ones. When they are young, they really don't have a lot of color, but as they grow older, they get more and more and more color, which is pretty cool. The other one that we have is the one that's white and kind of white and brown spots. That is Julidochromis transcriptus. We have a couple of them. We actually have a pair, and they'll breed in here occasionally. We'll pull out some fry and sell them at swaps and auctions. But this is just a Lake Tanganyika setup. All these fish get along relatively well. What's cool is this area here where there's a bunch of shells. The calypters, what they do, the male, the alpha male will take all the shells in the fish tank and put them on one side, and then he gets them all. And then the females are all his, and they all stay in the tank. So it's kind of interesting.
That is cool.
Yeah. So down here at the bottom, we have another 33 long, and this is Guaianacara sturgiosi. That's a pair on the right-hand side. We haven't had any babies from them yet, but they're starting to dig. They're starting to use that little cave a little bit more. There is another pair on the other side, and the female, just based on her color by the sponge filter, it looks like maybe she's starting to want to breed, and there's another male over there somewhere. We've got some green neon tetras in here as well, so it's just a place for them. We're hoping to get some fry from them at some point. So this tank, this is one of our 50-gallon low boys. This is a Apistogramma. These are fire reds. So we've got about 5 or 6 of them in here, along with some pencil fish. And somewhere in here we also have some orange laser cory cats, which are really awesome. They're still on the younger side, but they get this fluorescent orange stripe going on both sides of their body. This tank has had a little bit of problem with green hair algae at times, but we try to manage it as best we can. I love looking at this tank. You can just kind of get lost with the fish in the aquascape.
I love how it doesn't matter which direction you look at it from.
Yeah, that was kind of, I think that's what Johanna was shooting for when she scaped this tank. She wanted it to look decent from every side and kind of make it interesting. So these are 40-gallon breeders. This is what I believe to be a pair of red gold severums. We got the female is the smaller, less colored one. And there's also some Cryptoheros sahica in here. This used to be a breeding tank for them, and we bred them a lot, and so we're down to just a few. A lot of the other ones we took to our local clubs, and other people wanted to breed them. So right now I'm hoping that we get a pair of these, the severums, and they'll start breeding for us at some point. And as they get larger, we'll probably move them to a larger tank as well. And then down here is another 40-gallon breeder. These are rainbow cichlids. It's another New World cichlid. This is a relatively peaceful cichlid. I wouldn't go so far as to call it peaceful, but it's certainly not super aggressive. I like the colors. Both the males and the females have awesome color. We get a lot of breeding activity out of this tank, which is pretty interesting. And it's just one of those fun tanks to look at just because of the way the fish interact with one another and the surroundings, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. I do love the rainbow cichlids.
Yeah, they're, it's not something that's super uncommon, but they just have awesome color. So this is a 10-gallon, and these 10 gallons for the most part in our fish room are grow-out tanks or quarantine tanks. These are actually fry from the 20 long that we have for the other gold ocelots, but now they're getting to the age where they're starting to inhabit shells, and we'll probably start seeing babies from these guys pretty soon. But they were just a grow-out tank for some fry.
Yeah.
And down below here we have, these are mostly just hybrids, and I find a lot of people like the way these fish look. These are dragon blood red empress mixes, and the males that look dragon blood like get a lot of deep reds. The fish that you see that are silver, now those are probably females, but a lot of times what we'll get is what we saw on the other side with the Geophagus tapajos tank, and that is these really interesting deep blue and red hybrid cichlids. I know a lot of people have various opinions about hybrids. Based on what I see at the swaps and the auctions, people really love them, and that's what's going to get them into the hobby and get them interested. That's okay, as long as they're not trying to sell them or breed them with purebreds and ruin, purebred lines. Just have to be honest about what you're getting. Yeah,
I've heard people rant about mixed cichlids,
sure.
But as a guy who's never kept any lake cichlids, I think they're cool looking. So
yeah, and you can actually see I just noticed that little silverfish she's holding, so you can see how her mouth is kind of bulging at the bottom. So even at that size, they're already starting to hold, so they're breeding in here. So that would be a dragon blood, F2 sort of mix, which is kind of interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah. So down at the bottom, This is just a grow out tank for some yellow labs. The Mbuna tank on this side produces a lot of fry. A lot of females hold, so when they're holding fry, we'll usually let them hold for a couple of weeks, and then we'll put them in a quarantine or a 10-gallon tank, and they'll spit their fry out, and they get to hang out with their babies for a while. So these are just some grow out yellow labs. This is one of my favorite tanks in our fish room. It's recently rescaped. This is Julidochromis ornatus. It's a fish from Lake Tanganyika in Africa. It's a cichlid. Really cool fish. I love the yellows, and this is a type of fish where it really matters in terms of the substrate color. A lighter substrate brings out those yellows, where if they were on like a black sand, they'd probably start to muddy up a little bit. So I'm hoping we'll get some babies from these fish at some point. They're still a little bit young, but you never know. In 4, 5, 6 months, hopefully we'll get a little bit more of these guys. There's 6 of them right now. Really cool fish. Just love the way they interact with their surroundings.
It is a fun tank to look at.
Yeah, that's...
the structure of the scape itself looks really nice, and then you just got some pretty fish in there with them.
You know, in any tank that you see in here where you're like, oh, that scape looks pretty good, that was Johanna. If you're looking at a tank like, that's ugly, that was me, it's a guarantee. I've never scaped a tank where I was done, I'm like, yep, I like the way that looks. But no, that's all hers. So this next tank, well, you want to take a guess who scaped this one? That would be me. It's strictly a breeding tank. So this is our super red bristlenose breeding tank. We just get lots of babies from these guys, usually about once every month or two, and we go ahead and we bring these to swaps and auctions and sell them there. But I love, this is my favorite type of bristlenose Pleco, I think. We have them in a number of our tanks. I just like the way they look. They add so much color to everything.
I agree 100%.
Stay down here on the ground, huh?
Yeah, rather than get up and down again.
So this is another Lake Tanganyikan tank. This is a shell dweller. This is Neolampologus similis. They look a lot like the multi, except they are a little bit darker bodied, and you start to see that really light color, the stripes, so it's a little bit different. I like these fish a lot. We started with like 5, I think, maybe 6, and there's at least 20 in here now. There's some behind the rocks over there. And again, they behave just like any other shell dweller, where they're not going to really prey on their fry too much. They're not super aggressive towards one another. Nice thing about some of the shell dwellers is you can keep them in a tank like 20 long and get that cichlid behavior and personality and not have to have some tank busting fish.
Yeah.
This,
I'm gonna guess, is this a mystery snail tank? Or
it's a mystery.
Oh, it's a mystery?
Yeah. This is a big mistake. This tank, this tank was originally set up to breed these Japan blue guppies, and I put a couple mystery snails in there just to kind of keep an eye on algae and do their thing. And then it turned into this, and we've pulled out probably hundreds of snails out of this tank, and they just keep repopulating. You can see there are smaller babies in various parts, but this has just been a really productive mystery snail breeding tank. Now you want to hear something really interesting? You see this Anubias?
Yeah.
It was at one point covered in blackbeard algae. And it was in one of Johanna's Nano tanks, and she's like, this is ugly, I don't want it. She's like, should I throw it away? I'm like, no, let me throw it in the mystery snail tank and see what happens. Now, generally speaking, I don't think mystery snails tend to eat blackbeard algae, so I wouldn't go out and be like, oh, I got a blackbeard algae problem, you just go ahead and get some mystery snails. But for whatever reason, there's so many of them in this tank that they took care of it. And now
they're hungry.
The plant looks basically cleaned off, so now it's become a working tank for us.
There you go.
So, turning around in the center.
This is one of my favorites.
So it's actually one of my favorites as well. This is another 50-gallon lowboy, and this is Neolampologus multifasciatus, otherwise known as the multi. It's another shell dweller. It looks a lot like the similis. I love this fish. You get a really cool community. These fish interact with one another. They're not superly overly aggressive towards one another. They don't prey on their fry, which means you're going to see a lot of babies at times. And if you look closely throughout this tank, you'll see some shells where there's little bitty tiny babies. They just pop up at various times, and it's a great tank to watch. It's fun, and it's just one of my favorite fish, just because of their personality and a very small size. Down below, these are another one of my favorites, and this is Neolampologus caudopunctatus redfin. And at least around here, they're not terribly common. And I just picked up, I think there's 5 of them, maybe 6 of them in this tank, and I'm hoping at some point they'll breed. They're really not shell dwellers. I've got some shells in there because sometimes some of the females like to hang out there, but they tend to be secretive spawners in the rocks, and it'd be really nice to get some fry from them at some point, although I think I may have to thin out the herd and make sure I'm down to probably 1 male in a tank this size. But we'll see. If they get to the point where they start looking like they want to breed, we'll we'll deal with the population.
Yeah.
This tank is kind of interesting. There's some dwarf panda guppies, and the males, that's as big as they get. They're actually really tiny. They're somewhere around an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch. They got pretty decent color. The females get a little bit bigger. In this tank, there are also some L10A Plecos, but they're often hiding and hard to see. But they're really cool when you can actually, you know, they actually come out. But they are secretive. But that's one of our guppy breeding projects. And there were more fish in there. We pulled some out, and now they got to repopulate again. So this is a 40-gallon breeder. We tend to have decent luck combining bristlenose plecos and shrimp. So these are some blue dream shrimp that we have, and then we've also got a number of albino, blue-eyed albino long fin plecos, which is a really cool. They're still small. They're not nearly close to breeding size yet. So we'll see it once they start breeding, but we've had pretty decent luck keeping these together. We've got a lot of little shrimplets in here. They just started doing this a few weeks ago, and there's a bunch, so I'm assuming we're going to get a lot more of them in the near future. So I mean, you look,
they'll take off.
Sand, yeah, and they just go crazy in there. So down here, this is a tank that we're really, it's going to wind up being a breeding tank. We got all of these electric blue acara, and now what we're looking at is probably trying to find, there's a pair over there that spends a lot of time by that terracotta pot, and they kind of somewhat chase the other fish around. So it may come to a point where we keep that pair, maybe take another pair, put them in a different tank and breed them for a little while, and go ahead and sell the rest of the other ones at a swap or an auction. But I just like this tank. I like looking at it. I think their colors are awesome.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
And again, this is a 40-gallon breeder, and you'll see the males display, but you don't see a lot of bullying here, and you know, fish hiding and fin nipping and that kind of thing. So it's kind of cool. They're more relaxed sort of cichlid, which I like.
Yes.
These are star sapphire cichlids. They are probably going to be moving to a larger tank in the not too distant future. The sex ratio in this tank is kind of screwed up. We got 3 males and 2 females. Usually you want to flip that around and probably have, you know, 3 or 4 females per male. But these guys grew up together, so you don't really see a whole lot of aggression, no fin nipping. They just kind of hang out. I love these fish, and what's really cool is when the lights are out on the tanks and we put the light on in the room, the spots on these fish are absolutely unbelievable. It's almost impossible to get on camera. I've tried a million times. I can't do it, but it's a really cool thing to look at. Now, if you want to see something interesting, that male, it's a male bristlenose pleco. They care for eggs, and right now it's sitting on a batch of eggs. At least it was yesterday, and now I can't.
Oh, yeah, I see them.
You see them?
I don't know if the camera is going to quite pick it up.
Yeah, so
I think I got a little bit
yesterday.
there. They're up underneath the rock.
Okay, yeah.
He's dug up underneath the rock.
Oh, there they are. Yeah, so he fans them, he cares for them. I'm probably going to have to, I will pull those out, because if I leave them in there, they're going to get eaten by the star sapphires. But they do breed in there. It's kind of cool.
That is cool.
This is a tank I like quite a bit, and you can see, look at all the fry. These are Cichlids leptosoma. And what's interesting about them is the females hold the fry for a considerable amount of time, and they only have small batches, so maybe 3, 4, 5 at a time, sometimes a little bit more, but they come out at almost that size. So when they split them out, they're actually relatively large. Males are the ones that are purple, and they've got the yellow fins. The females tend to stay more silver. And we've also got some shell dwellers in here, some Neolamprologus brevis. Pretty cool fish. They're silver. They get a little bit of purple under the eye, which is kind of nice. We've got, this is also, believe it or not, an assassin snail breeding tank. We'll feed some bloodworms in there and they'll go crazy. The assassin snails, they tend to just kind of chill out and come out only when there's food. Otherwise, they're pretty much in the substrate, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Up here, tank is not beautiful, but it's really, its job is to breed bristlenose plecos. So we got a lot of fry from this tank. There are also some cichlids in here that were growing out, some Metroclima grishaki albinos. They were actually juveniles from some adults we had, and I didn't catch them out, but now they're getting to a size where they can breed themselves. But I want to pull them out because I want to make sure we still get bristlenose pleco fry out of this tank. So at one point, we had like 200 bristlenose in this tank, and we just sell them out. And a lot of water changes, making sure we keep up with our filter maintenance just to keep the water looking good.
This guy looks like he's just sleeping upside down.
Well, they do that. At first you think they're dead. Yeah. No, they're fine.
Mouse working, we're good.
One of my favorite Mbunas. This is Pseudotropheus solosi. What I like about them is this is the same fish. The females are yellow, and the males have the blue with the dark blue stripes. And these grew up together. Again, the ratios male to female is completely backwards. We should be seeing at least 4 or 5 females and maybe 1 male, maybe 2. But this, again, it's working because these fish grew up together and they've got their dominance hierarchy worked out, so we don't see fin nipping. We're not seeing a lot of fish that are absolutely being terrorized, which is kind of cool. But I like looking at this tank. The fish really pop. I just love them. This tank is a 75-gallon, and it's really a tank that we use for breeding some of our dragon bloods, and we get a lot of really cool OBs from some of the combinations in this tank, especially the red empress with the blue faces and the dragon bloods. They're just the OB that you see in this tank and the OBs that we've seen in the fish room. That's all red empress and dragon blood combinations. We've got an oddball in this tank, and that is this. This is Ruby. She is a female Midas, and she had a husband, and unfortunately they had babies, and the husband, sometimes they'll stop eating when they have babies, and the fry would pick off the parents like discus would, and we couldn't get the male to go back on food, which was really sad. So we needed a place for her to hang out, and so far this is working out great. Certainly do not recommend this normally. It's one of those things where you have to know the personality of the fish and the tank and kind of get a feel for whether or not it's going to work. And so far it's been fine. We'll keep an eye on it. It's been a few weeks. Nobody's getting beat up. If something changes, we'll do something different. A lot of fish in here are holding. So the silverfish, you can see they look like they have a mouthful of something. The dragon blood, especially by that piece of wood, you can see she's about ready to spit out a whole bunch of fry.
Oh yeah.
That are probably going to be at least 50% OBs, which is kind of cool. But when we pull, this tank is always very productive for us. So it's more of a breeding tank and not so much a display tank. We have another different type of shell dweller here. This is Neolamprologus signatus. The males are the ones with the vertical bars, and the females are the ones that stay silver, and they stay quite a bit smaller. What's kind of interesting about this fish is the females actually tend to be more aggressive towards one another than males sometimes. So in a tank this size, sometimes only a pair will work out, although we're doing okay. We've got 3 males and 3 females in here, and so far they've done pretty good. I'm expecting at some point relatively soon we're probably going to start seeing some breeding behavior. They're about at that right size. They've been hanging out at their shells a long time, so hopefully we'll get some breeding. I love the shell dweller. We won't spend a lot of time on this tank, it's boring. We do have fish in here, believe it or not. They are Mbuna cichlids from Africa, but they hang out in the rocks almost all the time. They're going to be cool when they get older. They're still a little bit young, but this is just a grow-out tank for them.
Gotcha.
This is another one of my favorite tanks. This is a 75-gallon Mbuna tank. So a lot of times you hear, African cichlids can be aggressive. Mbunas are some of the more aggressive African cichlids. But when you learn how to manage the aggression, you wind up with a pretty nice looking tank with a lot of color. The trick is making sure you got a lot of fish in this space, so we purposely overstock this tank to cut down on the aggression, to cut down on the ability of the fish to claim any one spot in that tank. A lot of different fish in here. We've got ACI, yellow labs, we've got some Insobos, red zebras, metroclima, Shake-eye, albinos, red top hongai. We've even got some OBs in here, some blue dolphins, but they get along pretty well. Again, this is a tank where you don't see a lot of fish hiding in a corner. You don't see a lot of fish being fin nipped. It's about managing the aggression.